Hey guys, Lise here from Hustle and Groove. Welcome to another video where we talk about all things related to how you can create an online business that's easy, fun, and profitable. Because why would we want to make things hard and complicated? It's something that we all do, which is why I'm here to make sure that you know what it looks like when things are easy and fun and profitable, right? We want to make some money. Otherwise, what's the point in having an online business? Today, though, we are talking about book launches, specifically what it looks like to have a successful first book launch. Now, this is part of a series of videos I'm doing. I have been an author since 2014, and while I'm not full-time, because hashtag multi-passionate author, I can share all the tips and strategies that I have learned since publishing books. So I want to talk to you about what it looks like to have a successful first book launch. And really, the first time you self-publish your book is the first time it's launching. So what I'm sharing with you applies no matter what book you're doing, but I am talking about nonfiction, and I am talking about the first time you're launching that book. I'm going to talk about a relaunch strategy a little later on. This is more focused on your first book launch for a brand new book. And yes, you do want to approach your relaunch strategy differently. So stay tuned for that. So let's chat about what it looks like. So before we go into all the things that you want to think about and discuss for your book launch, let's look at the 3 different phases that you actually want to pay attention to. So personally, I like to think about things in phases. So we've got like a pre-launch phase, we've got the launch phase, and then we've got post-launch. Yes, you have to think about what you're doing with your book after it launches. This is not about launching and then doing nothing, particularly if you want to be successful, right? So this is about paying attention. It's about figuring out what you want to put your efforts into. Because at the end of the day, the way that you launch your book largely comes down to what works for you. Easy and fun is what we're going for here, right? So I'm going to share with you some ideas, but you want to filter these through what feels good for you, because marketing is very personal. You will do way better if you are aligned and excited about the marketing activities that you're doing versus doing something just because it's a strategy that somebody else said you should do, right? 100% you want to focus on the things that feel good and easy for you. Okay, I'm off my sermon. Now let's talk about pre-launch. So when it comes to pre-launch, what am I talking about? Really, I'm talking about your planning phase. Your book is likely with the editor. This is when the pre-launch phase really kicks in. But you could even take it back as far as when you validated your book, right? You could really start thinking about marketing pieces then, because you want to make sure that your book is set up for success. And that means making sure that your book is going to achieve the goal that you want. So be clear on what that is. So if you're using your nonfiction book to bring leads into your business, then you want to make sure that you have got pieces inside your book that link to your website. Otherwise, how are they going to find you? And yes, you can 100% include hyperlinks in your ebook version. Now, you can't in your print version, but in your print version, you can still point to the link, right? You can still do that. So don't be afraid to include links, but just think about it from your reader's perspective. What makes sense? You don't want to include all the links. You just want to talk about it at the beginning, maybe in the middle, and towards the end. That's typically what I do. So number 1, just make sure that you've done that. So that is part of my pre-launch planning and pre-launch phase, is making sure that my book is set up to do the thing that I want it to do. Then I start thinking about the actual marketing activities around the time that my editor has the book. And once it's with the editor, it just frees up your time, right? You've done the hard part, the writing piece. That's done. It's now your editor's job to make sure everything is perfect, that it is going to be the most amazing book for your reader. So once that's off your plate, you can really start to think about, okay, when do I want to launch, right? Like that is your first option. Now, I typically like to take a longer approach to my launch. Of course, you could turn around and launch your book within 4 weeks, right? If you've got a hard deadline from your editor, you're formatting the book, your cover design is already done, you could legitimately launch your book in 4 weeks. However, I like to plan and prep things. So I like to have a 90-day plan of pre-launch, right? So I have this pre-launch phase of prepping and figuring things out. So then this allows me to do a couple of things. Number one, it allows me to get some content together for launch. Now, you do not have to do this. Again, filter this through what makes sense for you. But I like to come up with content. So that means social media content. I'll likely do a video if I'm launching a book and it's on a specific topic that I can talk about. And then I can have a call to action at the end of the video that points to the book. So all of the content that I'm creating in this pre-launch phase is content that's going to be published as part of the launch. But I can prep it all now. So I might do a couple of blog posts, I might do a couple of videos, and then I'm likely going to do actual social media posts. So I'm going to create all of this content. I'm likely going to repurpose, right? Once you've got your book, you can repurpose content from that. So think things like quotable images, right? You can pull content from your book and create all these amazing quotable images. Do what makes sense for you. But that's kind of where I start. I think about all those types of things. Then I think about the actual launch. How long is my launch going to go for? Now, typically, I like to have a launch that goes over a 2-week period. It gives you the most amount of time to fully optimize. And if you need to tweak things, you've got a bit of time to do that. So I know that I'm going to be launching over a 2-week period. So then I'm going to decide on what actual marketing activities are going to happen in that time frame. So I already know I've got all my content done. Do I want to be on some podcast interviews? Do I want to write some guest blog posts? Are there any other collaboration pieces that I could utilize to get my book out there? Now, this is really important if you don't have an audience to start with, right? Like if you're sort of just starting out fresh, then collaboration should be your number one focus. And however you choose to collaborate is always going to be up to you. So podcast interviews, guest blog posts, you could do Facebook Lives in Facebook communities, whatever works for you. You could do stuff on LinkedIn. You could start an entire Twitter chat. Again, filter this through what is easy and fun for me, right? What do I connect and resonate with? So all of this is being planned to be dropped over that 2-week period. So if you're thinking about a podcast in particular, I would want the podcast planning piece to be done probably even earlier, particularly if I'm pitching podcasts. If I haven't been on any podcasts before, it's a little bit harder to get your initial feet in the door. So you're going to need to do some research around that. So you're probably going to need to allow yourself a solid 5 months to get on some podcasts, and particularly to have them scheduling around the time that your book is launching. So there's a little bit of moving pieces in this pre-launch phase, right? This pre-launch phase is where you plan all the stuff out. The launch itself, right, that 2-week period is actually relatively easy because all of the prep work is done. You just get to show up in whatever way you want to show up during that 2-week period. So I'm also probably going to consider some paid marketing. At a minimum, Amazon ads, right? Amazon ads work extremely well during launch. So you definitely want to consider doing those. And when you're starting an Amazon ad campaign, you want a minimum of 1,000 keywords as a starting point. Now, you might be sitting there going, oh, how do I come up with those keywords? Well, I have a tool, and yes, I am affiliated with this tool, but OMG, it is the most amazing tool, and I use it all the time. And as an author, you can't afford not to have access to it. It's Publisher Rocket. Publisher Rocket has been created by the amazing Dave Tesson of kindlepreneur.com. If you want all the marketing tips and strategies, go and sign up there. Dave is amazing. He's a friend and he knows what he's doing. So Publisher Rocket is the most amazing tool. It is $97, but it's a one-time fee for now. I know that the last time I spoke to Dave, he was thinking about turning it into a subscription model. But if you lock in your price now, like if you lock in access, that's it. You're golden. You have lifetime access. And the best part is they update it regularly, but it gives you all the data and it gives you all the Amazon keywords that you could possibly need. So that is like my pro tip. That's how you find Amazon ad keywords, but it's also how you find keywords and categories. So this pre-launch phase, this is where you spend the majority of your time. This is where you map out everything. This is where you prep. And the more prep that you put in, the easier your launch is going to be. I cannot reiterate that enough. The easier your launch is going to be. Okay, so that's phase one, pre-launch. We have planned and prepped the crap out of all of that. So now let's look at launch. What are you doing then? Now, because you've done all this work in phase one, phase two, launch, is easy. All you have to do is show up daily. That's it. Everything else is scheduled and mapped out, ads are running, all of those pieces are done. So you actually just get to enjoy being present and sharing your book. So this is where, depending on your social media platform, depending on where your audience is, where you might like to do some Facebook Lives, you might like to do some Instagram stories, IGTV, whatever works for you. Doesn't have to be video. You could do audio, whatever. But show up daily. That is your number one goal during launch, is to show up daily online. Now, you do not need to be everywhere. You only need to choose one platform. Choose a platform that feels good for you. I have 100% focused on Facebook this entire time, and I have been in business for 10 years. Yes, I have a presence on all the social media platforms, but I show up. I show up on Facebook because that is the easiest for me, right? It's easy for me. I understand it. It's also where the majority of my audience is. So it makes sense. So you don't need to be everywhere at all. Focus on what is easy and fun, right? What is easy and fun for you during launch? Now, you just obviously want to pay attention to things like, how is your book ranking from the Amazon bestseller ranks? You want to pay attention to that. You want to pay attention to the categories that you're in. You want to pay attention to the keywords that you chose, because you're probably going to need to tweak those. You don't have any data when you don't have your book published, but once your book is published, you have some data. So about 7 days into the first week of launch, right? 7 days in, I will go in and just make sure that I'm actually being ranked for those keywords. So if I need to change any, I can at that time. I don't recommend changing categories though, because categories are how you get the bestseller banner. Now, if you're not ranking for a category, then 100% you can change it, but focus on driving traffic to your sales page. That is all that you're doing during launch. So you're just going to check on your Amazon ads, any other marketing, paid marketing activities that you've got in place. You're going to check on those. You're going to check your keywords. You're going to check your category rankings, and you're just going to pay attention and track that information, right? Track your data so that you can make an informed decision in the post-launch phase. So to recap, during launch, really, you are showing up daily, you are getting traffic to your sales page, although that is largely taken care of from all the pre-launch stuff that you've put in place, and you're paying attention to your numbers. All of that is super important. So then in phase 3, which is post-launch, we are going to take that information that we have just been tracking so we can make decisions about our long-term strategy, right? I'm assuming that if you have written this nonfiction book, and you want it to be successful, then you know and understand that you need to do ongoing things. So for starters, if your Amazon ads campaign has been relatively successful, then continue it. But you can probably drop your budget. You can probably drop your budget down to about $10 a day, and that will just consistently keep your book in the top 100 in your categories. Now, knowing that you're only going to show up for the top 3 categories, so focus on the categories that make the most sense for you. You're also going to look at your keywords again and then make a decision around whether you want keywords that increase visibility or keywords that increase profitability. Sometimes they're one and the same, but pay attention and know that ongoing, you're going to want to update your keywords at least every 60 to 90 days. Ideally though, every 30 days. You want to be looking at this. Remember, what you focus on grows. So if you're focusing on your keywords, you are always going to make sure that you're being found for those keywords. And that's where Publisher Rocket is going to be an amazing tool for you, because it gives you data. It gives you data on the last 30 days. So you can really understand what your audience is actually looking for and typing into the search bar. So you're going to pay attention to that. You're going to tweak your Amazon campaigns. You might start multiple Amazon ad campaigns. And then really, if you wanted to, I would look at all the marketing pieces that you put in place. So if you did some podcast interviews, if you did some guest blog posts, how did they go? Right? What does that look like? How much traffic did they really send to your book? Now, you probably need to get that information from the person that did the podcast interview or the guest blog post, but you can track this if you use a tool like Pretty Link. So this is only for WordPress users on a self-hosted platform. Pretty Link is a plugin that you can use to be a redirect. So basically what you would do is you would take your Amazon sales page link, create a Pretty Link. And the reason it's called Pretty Link is that it uses your domain name. So for example, if I wanted to track link clicks to my Side Hustle Blueprint book, then I would take the link from Amazon, put it into the Pretty Link plugin, and create a Pretty Link that might look like hustleandgroove.com/SHB book 1. And then what happens is when I look in the Pretty Link dashboard, I can see the clicks. Now, what you want to do is make sure that you create a Pretty Link for every podcast interview that you do, for every guest blog post that you do, so you can track it. So I would create a Pretty Link that said SHB book 1 dash, and then whatever the name of the podcast was. And I'd abbreviate it so that no one looking at it would be like, why is Lise putting this in there? So you can do little things like that to really understand what marketing pieces help get traffic to your sales page. Because here's the thing, Amazon does not give you that data. Amazon's not going to give you that data. So you need to take control of that and be proactive and track it for yourself. Now, if you're not using WordPress, there are other ways that you can do this. You can use the bit.ly URL shortener to do the same thing, to be able to track that information. And then do more of what's working. Do more of what is getting the traffic to your sales page. But it's also, what is the traffic that's converting? And again, Amazon doesn't share that information with you, but you can pay attention to the dates that your podcast episode goes live or that your guest blog post goes live. How much traffic did you get on that day? And this is even easier to track after launch, because all of your main marketing efforts have stopped except for your Amazon ads. That is just going to give you a consistent traffic to your sales page. And you can see that in your Amazon ads dashboard. Like, you can track that. That's easily trackable. So you already know that's already accounted for. It's everything else outside of that this will allow you to track. Okay, so then that's all you're going to do. Post-launch, you're going to look at all the data, you're going to make decisions, and you're going to map out your long-term strategy. At a minimum, you want to make sure that you're at least promoting that sales page once a week on social media. You can probably do it more depending on the social media platform, but it's on you, right? It's on you. Why would you stop talking about your amazing book after it's launched? It doesn't stop. So just like your blog, just like your website, you need to be talking about it. So figure out what that looks like for you. Repurpose content, right? If you did a whole bunch of social media images, all of those things in your pre-launch phase, repurpose them, create more. Just do what feels good for you. So really, the first successful book launch is going to largely depend on all of the marketing pieces that you have. Now, I have a much more detailed blog post linked below that actually walks you through all the possible steps that you could have. So you can pick and choose what works for you, but think about it in these 3 phases because it will help you get control and get organized. Because if you're organized, then things just are so much easier. You do not want to be worrying about having to start a whole bunch of marketing campaigns in the middle of launch. It will drive you batty, right? And if you want more information, if you want to learn even more about this stuff, stay tuned, subscribe, because I'm going to be releasing even more videos that cover this information. I'm Lise Cartwright. I am so glad that you're here. And if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below. And remember, we release videos Tuesdays and Thursdays. So pay attention, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.